Moonlight and mayhem, the terror begins. Texarkana. A small town, known for its quiet streets and close-knit community, straddling the border of Texas and Arkansas, it was a place where everyone knew each other. February 22, 1946. A night that began like any other, with the town settling into its usual evening routine. But the darkness held a secret, a sinister presence lurking in the shadows, a terror that would change Texarkana forever, leaving an indelible mark on its history. Young lovers, Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry, parked on a secluded road, seeking a moment of privacy. The moonlight, their only companion, cast an eerie glow on the deserted road. Suddenly a figure emerged from the darkness, shattering their sense of security. A man in a white mask, his intentions unknown but clearly menacing. He pointed a gun at them, the cold metal glinting in the moonlight. A nightmare was about to unfold, one that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The masked man forced them to the ground, his voice cold and commanding. He tied Jimmy's hands with his own belt, rendering him helpless. Then, he turned his attention to Mary Jean. He brutally pistol-whipped her, each blow more vicious than the last. Fear turned into agony. The night was shattered by their screams, echoing through the stillness. The attacker fled into the darkness, leaving behind a scene of horror. Leaving Jimmy and Mary Jean battered and traumatized, their lives forever altered. They had survived a terrifying ordeal, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would remain. But they were forever marked by the encounter, their eyes reflecting the horror they had endured. The news spread like wildfire, the story of the masked attacker gripping the town. Texarkana realized a monster was among them, and the sense of safety they once knew was shattered. A city gripped by fear, shadows in the night, days turned into weeks. The attack on Lover's Lane haunted Texarkana. People were afraid. The unknown assailant was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. The police were baffled. They had few leads, no witnesses. The attacker seemed to vanish into thin air. The pressure mounted. They had to catch the culprit, before he could claim another victim. Meanwhile, fear seeped into everyday life. People avoided going out at night. They armed themselves, they double-checked their locks. The once peaceful town was now gripped by paranoia and suspicion. The unknown was the most terrifying thing. Was the attacker a stranger, or someone they knew? Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every face a potential suspect. Whispers in the dark, the legend of the Phantom. In the quiet, shadowy corners of 1940s Texarkana, whispers of a terrifying figure began to circulate. This figure, shrouded in mystery and fear, would soon become known as the Phantom Killer. The newspapers dubbed the assailant the Phantom Killer. Headlines screamed of his gruesome deeds, capturing the attention of a nation already on edge from the aftermath of World War II. The name sent chills down the spines of Texarkana's citizens. Fear spread like wildfire, gripping the hearts of everyone in the small town. It was a chilling reminder of the unseen terror haunting their town. The darkness seemed to hold more than just shadows, it held the threat of the unknown. The Phantom became a local legend. Stories of his attacks were passed from person to person, each retelling more horrifying than the last. A boogeyman whispered about in hushed tones. Parents would gather their children close, warning them of the dangers lurking in the night. Parents warned their children about him. They spoke of the Phantom as if he were a ghost, a specter that could appear at any moment. Young couples avoided secluded spots. The fear was palpable. Lovers' lanes, once places of romance, became deserted as the threat of the Phantom loomed large. It hung in the air like a thick fog. The sense of dread was inescapable, permeating every corner of the town. Rumors and speculation ran rampant. Each new theory seemed more outlandish than the last, yet all were taken seriously in the climate of fear. Some believed the Phantom was an escaped mental patient. This theory added a layer of psychological horror to the already terrifying narrative. Others thought he was a drifter passing through town. The idea that a stranger could bring such chaos was unsettling. Every theory added to the growing sense of unease. The town was caught in a web of fear and uncertainty. The police received numerous tips and leads. Each one was followed with the hope of catching the elusive killer. Most turned out to be dead ends. The frustration among law enforcement grew as the Phantom continued to evade capture. The lack of concrete evidence only deepened the mystery. The Phantom remained elusive. Each crime scene offered little in the way of clues, leaving the town in a state of perpetual fear. A phantom in every sense of the word. The legend of the Phantom Killer endures, a haunting reminder of the terror that once gripped Texarkana. The Hunter and the Hunted. A desperate search for answers. Captain Max Tackett led the investigation. A seasoned lawman, he was determined to bring the Phantom to justice. He worked tirelessly, following every lead, interviewing every witness. The police presence in Texarkana was increased. Patrol cars cruised the streets. Officers walked the beat, their eyes peeled for anything suspicious. But the Phantom was always one step ahead. The investigation became a game of cat and mouse. The Phantom would strike, the police would follow his trail, but the trail always went cold. It was frustrating, it was infuriating, it was terrifying. Despite their best efforts, the police were no closer to catching the Phantom. The town held its breath, waiting, watching, wondering when and where he would strike again. Section 5. False Hope and Shattered Peace. The Phantom strikes again. Weeks later, on a warm spring night, Texarkana dared to hope. Maybe the nightmare was over. Maybe the Phantom had moved on. But they were wrong. On March 24, 1946, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found dead in Richard's car. They had been shot, just like the previous victims. The Phantom had struck again. This time he had taken 2 lives. The news sent shockwaves through Texarkana. The fragile peace was shattered. Fear returned with a vengeance. People were terrified. The Phantom was still out there, more brazen, more ruthless. The murders of Richard and Polly Ann were a turning point. The investigation intensified. The FBI was called in. They offered a reward for information leading to the Phantom's arrest. But the Phantom remained elusive. Section 6. Ewell Swinney, The Shadow of Doubt. As the investigation progressed, one name kept surfacing. Ewell Swinney. He was a figure well known to the local police, not just for petty crimes but for a series of violent offenses that had marked his past. A known criminal with a history of violence. His record was extensive, filled with instances of theft, assault, and other felonies that painted a grim picture of his character. He became the prime suspect. The police were convinced that they had finally found the man behind the mask of the Phantom Killer. But was he the Phantom? The question lingered in the air, casting a shadow over the investigation. Swinney was brought in for questioning. The interrogation room became a battleground of wits and nerves. He denied any involvement in the murders. His denials were firm, his demeanor unyielding. He claimed he was out of town when the crimes took place. His alibi seemed solid, but doubts remained. But the police were suspicious. They felt there were too many coincidences, too many unanswered questions. The evidence against Swinney was circumstantial. There were no fingerprints, no direct witnesses placing him at the scene, but it was enough to raise doubts. The community was divided, some convinced of his guilt, others skeptical. He owned a car similar to the one spotted at one of the crime scenes. This piece of evidence seemed to tie him to the crimes. He also matched the description of the Phantom given by some witnesses. His physical appearance and mannerisms were eerily similar. The police believed they had their man. They were ready to close the case and bring peace to Texarkana, but they couldn't prove it. The lack of concrete evidence was a significant hurdle. There wasn't enough evidence to charge him with the murders. The case against him was weak, built on suspicion rather than solid proof. Swinney remained a free man. He walked the streets of Texarkana, a free man, but forever under the shadow of doubt. But the cloud of suspicion never left him. The town of Texarkana would always remember him as the man who might have been the Phantom Killer. Section 7. Texarkana's Nightmare. The end of the terror? After the murders of Richard and Polly Ann, the attacks suddenly stopped. The Phantom vanished as quickly as he had appeared. Texarkana breathed a collective sigh of relief. Was it finally over? Life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the fear remained. The scars ran deep. The Phantom's reign of terror had left an indelible mark on the town and its people. The police never closed the case. They continued to investigate every lead, every tip. But the Phantom's identity remained a mystery. He was never caught, never brought to justice. The Moonlight Murders became a cold case, but the legend of the Phantom lived on. A chilling reminder of the darkness that had once gripped Texarkana. Section 8. A Legacy of Fear, the Phantom's Grip on Texarkana. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders had a profound impact on the town. It changed the way people lived. It shattered their sense of security. It left a legacy of fear that lingered for generations. For years after the attacks, people were still afraid of the dark. They avoided secluded areas. They double-checked their locks. The phantom shadow loomed large in their minds. The Moonlight Murders also put Texarkana on the map, but not in a way anyone would have wanted. The town became synonymous with the unsolved crimes, a macabre tourist attraction. Every year, around the anniversary of the murders, Texarkana remembers. They hold events, they discuss theories, they try to make sense of the senseless, but the answers remain elusive. Section 9. Unanswered questions, the mystery endures. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders continue to fascinate and frustrate people to this day. It is a story that has it all: mystery, suspense, terror, and like all good mysteries, it leaves us with more questions than answers. Who was the Phantom Killer? Was it Ewell Swinney, or was he an innocent man wrongly accused? Was the Phantom a local, or an outsider passing through? We may never know the answers. The evidence is lost to time. Witnesses have passed away. The Phantom took his secrets to the grave. But the mystery endures, a reminder that some crimes are never solved, some stories are never truly over.